All right, let me show you where everything started that made Terry Bollea end up becoming the man that we know on this Halloween mask. So famous, in fact, that he would have a Halloween mask. Hulk Hogan. Well, this is getting kind of sad to see. I made it over to historic North Albany, and all of the buildings on this side of the street are all boarded up, which means that they're all either for sale, which I don't see any for sale signs, or they're all going to get demolished, which is what I think is going to happen. And that's really sad because this building right here was the home of championship wrestling from Florida. And this is where Terry Bollea got his start, really. Now, he used to go watch matches at the Armory also, but the tapings all from Florida were done here. So he said they did the tapings on, I think, Wednesday night, and his mom would actually write him a note for school stating that she excused his absence so that he could go to the tapings of this stuff. Now this is, I mean, we're talking Harley Race, Wahoo McDaniel, Lex Luger started here, but the story of Terry Bollea here is pretty interesting. Now I gotta say, when I met Hulk Hogan, one of the things I asked him was like, hey, do you think you'll ever make a video of you driving around showing, you know, where your childhood home was and where you trained and got started and everything? And he said, you know, my boy Ron's trying to get me to do that. We're going to do that in the future. So I was always looking forward to that because I always thought that would be way cooler than me coming out and doing this kind of stuff. But unfortunately, he never did it. Hulk was a busy guy, but I do have to say, when I met him, other than Roddy Piper, he was the nicest wrestler I've ever met. When I talked to him, I truly felt like he cared about what I was talking about and asked me questions. Our conversation wasn't 2 minutes, it was like 5 minutes. He really spent time, showed he cared. He was a real people person. I got that from him. So this is truly sad to see these places and to know that, you know, there's no memorial plaque, that some of these may be gone soon. So it was important to come do this because I've read for about a year now that they are going to tear this down. It was for sale for a while, but now they're just tearing it down, and they've even boarded up the windows up here. But beyond just coming here and watching the tapings, he said this is when he kind of realized how it was done and how maybe he could be a wrestler. He was in the band, and that's what his focus was, and he told his parents, you know, hey, I want to quit school so I can do the band, be a rock star and everything. But then, like I said, he was getting tired of playing the same old stuff all the time. So he was going to the matches, and he started to notice, he said one night, that when Cowboy Bob Orton was wrestling, that Bob was mouthing the words like, hit me, to his opponent. And so he said that kind of smartened me up to where I realized, oh, they're kind of calling the shots in the ring. So like I said, he never liked to be physical. He could handle himself when put in the situation, but he just said that was not the kind of person that he was and liked. So he said he would come here and he would always wear like tight shirts and stuff because he'd been working out, and he was always hoping to get noticed by one of the wrestlers. Because he said, you know, like when there's a hero like Dusty, they always need a big guy villain to come in, and they usually bring him from out of the territory. So he was kind of hoping maybe they'd see him and go, hey kid, you want to wrestle? He said, but that never happened. They saw him all the time, and that never ever happened. He said, so then he got to the point where he would wait after the matches for the wrestlers outside, and he said he totally would become a mark. He was the same kind of guy that he said later on, he said, I didn't even realize how obnoxious I was. He said, but I became the guy that I would roll my eyes at later in life, where he said some guy'd come up to me, flex his arm and go, hey Hulk, I've been lifting weights for 3 years. I'm going to be the next Hulk Hogan. He said, I would hear that, you know, 100 times a day. He goes, so I can imagine what these guys must put up with. And so he said, I was doing that all the time. Every time somebody come out here, I go, hey man, I'm going to be the next superstar Billy Graham. He goes, so finally, he said at the time, this was Championship Wrestling from Florida was run by Eddie Graham. And Hiro Matsuda was also the silent promotion partner. But Eddie Graham had a son named Mike Graham who was a wrestler, and Hulk, well, Terry knew him from when they were in high school. So he said they never got along. He said Mike always kind of thought he was somebody, and now that he was a wrestler and he had bulked up a little bit, he really thought he was somebody. So he said Terry would say, you know, I would come here and I would see Mike and he would never give me the time of day or anything like that, and I never wanted anything from him. But he said one day he saw me waiting out here and he said, you know what, come here. And he said we went over to my van. So I assume his van was parked, you know, pretty close by or something. He said we went over to my van, and he said, and we got in the back of the van, and he said, look, you can't be out here constantly telling people you're going to be somebody and this and that or whatever. He said, they're going to hate you immediately. He said, let me see what I can do, and, you know, maybe I can help get you in. He said, well, I thought he was just trying to be like a nice guy for once. But he said, I realized later this was all just a setup. So he said, so they told me to show up over here for like a tryout. And when I showed up, it was with Hiro Matsuda. And Hiro, he said they basically would put you through an hour's worth of Hindu free squats and just wear you out and have you do push-ups and do all this stuff. He said, and then once you were falling down, almost sick to your stomach and everything, he said, then they would put you in the ring and they'd stretch you and teach you moves and stuff. And he said, well, they didn't like me. And so he said, so when Hiro put me in the ring, he said, by that point, I was just completely worn out, and he put me in a hold and broke my leg. Now, other wrestlers throughout the years, like Jerry Briscoe and Brian Blair and people, they've had variations on this story where they said, he wasn't hurt that bad. He was like, it was a strain and that he was just out for a couple of days. And one guy said, well, the real story is that not even the way he tells it in his book, it's actually that they sent him off to be like a bad guy wrestler, some territories with zero training. He didn't like the way he was being used, and then he came back and was complaining about it at the Sportatorium. And that's when they decided just to like teach him a lesson. And so because he was so big, he was 6'5", 250 pounds. He had long blonde hair, but he said he was losing his hair at the age of 18. So he said, but the whole time they were ragging on him, like calling him a hippie and everything because of his hair. And he said, just not even giving him a fair chance. He said, they were dead set on making an example out of me. And when I asked him, when I met Hulk about 2 years ago, I said, where did they break your leg at? Where was that at? Was that at the Sportatorium on Albany? And he said, yep, that's exactly where it was. So this is where that historic moment happened. So he said, so once his leg was broke, he actually had to wait for about 10 weeks for it to heal up. And he said, and he stayed at his parents' house, like I told you. And then he said, all I could think about was not giving up or what I was going to do next. It was like all I could think about was healing up and teaching these guys that they couldn't run me off. There's some side doors over here I just wanted to take a look at in case that was where he would wait for the wrestlers. But he said, finally one day I was healed up and I came back here and I walked in. And he said, when I walked in, first person I saw was Mike Graham. And he's like, what are you doing here? And I said, I want to see Hiro. And he said, I got in the ring with Hiro and said, you're not going to run me off. I want to be a wrestler. I think I can be the greatest wrestler ever. He said, so they got me back in the ring, and Hiro immediately tried to hook me. And he said, I broke free. Then he went for my head and I broke free. Then he went for my neck and I broke free. And he said, after a while, he got mad and realized that I wasn't going to be run out of here. So he said, for about a year, I would come here every day and they would put me through vigorous training. And then they made me the guy. They made me the guy that when people came here and said, hey, I'm going to be the next Billy Graham, I'm going to be the next blah, 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 they would send them over to me and they would want me to hurt those guys. He said, I never broke anybody's bones or anything like that. But he said, they would send them over to me and they would want me to basically run the guys off. But I mean, lots of historic people were here. Ronnie Garvin. I mean, everybody that came through Florida wrestling at that point, like he said back in those days, there was no WWF, there was no WWF on TV down here in Florida. He said all it was CWF. And he said, and we just went crazy for it. We loved everything about it. And he said, and I decided when I came back here that I was going to put everything into this. For once, I was not going to give up after a year. I was going to stick to my guns. And he said, I saw how much of a entertainment business this was. From watching Dusty lay out those bionic elbows inside this arena to Bob Orton calling out the next move. He said, I realized that it was a show and I was a showman. Even though I didn't want the attention in my band, he said I would just do some banter in between. He said I never wanted the attention, but he said once I started wrestling, I knew that I could be the best. I want to see if I can see anything through those dirty windows. That takes you to the second floor, and he said he could remember occasionally you would see the wrestlers up on the second floor watching the matches. But he said it would never be like good guys and bad guys together because they believed in protecting the business back then. He said on one side of the arena you would see like a good guy come out and look and watch from the second floor, and then on the other side after he left, then one of the bad guys would come out and watch. Man, that is awesome just to see a little bit of what we can see, that's for sure. That's awesome. I guess from a report I saw a couple of years ago, it looks like they might be renovating, or maybe they're tearing the stuff out of it. I don't know, but when I saw they were trying to sell it a few years ago, they said you could still see like where the ring poles went into the ground back then. But if you look up any championship wrestling from Florida on YouTube, you can see the inside of this place. This is just so sad to see that this part of history is going to be gone soon. I can see somebody's already taken those famous 106 numbers up there. This was 106 North Albany. There's even a YouTube called that has some great matches, and they actually have some great videos of Hiro Matsuda putting people through the training and everything. Him and Lex Luger and some other people. So it's worth checking out if you really want to see more. But man, to think of every big wrestler that ever really came down the pike in our lifetime, from, like I said, Harley Race, Wahoo McDaniel, Ron Bass, Andre the Giant, Dusty Rhodes, Superstar Billy Graham, and where Terry Bollea got his start, Terry Boulder. Sad though, he said that when he finally, after a year, they told him, hey, you're going to have your first match. They even put him through a pretty arduous day then. Pat Patterson basically hazed him the whole drive there. He made Terry ride with him, and basically the entire ride there was saying like, hey, if you don't perform a sexual act on me, then the guys are going to take advantage of you in the locker showers afterward, and really got in his head. And then they told him that he was going to win the match against Brian Blair. And he said it was supposed to be a short match, and then they told Brian, hey, do a 20-minute Broadway. So every time Terry would try and pin him, Brian would break free, and he was like, Terry said, I kept thinking, oh my God, they're really gonna, like, even after a year, they're gonna try and trick me at the end. And so he said finally after 20 minutes the bell rang and it was deemed a draw. And when he came back through the curtains, he was scared to death he was going to get attacked like they told him, and everybody was waiting there with cans of beer. So he said it was all a big celebration, but he said after that night, he said, you know what, there's nothing that they can do that's going to get me out of wrestling. And they never did. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you next time. Rest in peace, Terry Bollea. Goodbye.